Last month, a single heat wave killed around 1,000 people in France in just 3 days. 85% of them were over 65. Right now, as you're watching this, the National Weather Service has close to 200 million Americans sitting under a heat alert. And this is the part almost nobody says out loud. Most people who die in a heat wave die at home, in a chair, some of them with a fan running 3 feet away, doing exactly what they'd done every summer of their lives. Because somewhere after 60, your body quietly loses a big part of its ability to cool itself, and no one sits you down to warn you it's happening. I'm Dr. John Myers. Many of the patients I've cared for were sure heat was an outdoor problem, something that happens to roofers and young athletes. A retired woman sitting in her own living room never pictured it happening to her, and that belief is exactly what makes it so dangerous. There are 5 mistakes that turn ordinary hot weather into an emergency. A couple of them are things you may be doing right now, convinced they're keeping you cool. Before you click away, sure you already know this one, stay with me, because getting just one of these wrong is what sends people to the emergency room. By the end, you'll know all 5, which ones apply to you, and exactly what to do instead, starting today. Before I go one step further, one quick thing, because it's the reason I make these videos at all. Staying safe in the heat is one small piece of a much bigger picture, the handful of everyday habits that quietly decide whether you're still strong and independent at 80, or slowing down and struggling at 65. I took everything I tell my own patients about living well in these years, and I put it into one simple plan. It has already helped thousands of people live their best life after 60. If you want it, the link is right there on your screen. You don't need to write anything down, and I would never make you sit through me reading out a web address. So let me start with the thing that ties all 5 of these mistakes together, because once you understand it, every one of them makes sense. Your body has a built-in cooling system. When you get too warm, 2 things happen. Your heart pumps more blood out to the surface of your skin, where it can shed heat into the air, and you sweat, and as that sweat evaporates, it carries the heat away. That system is remarkable, and for most of your life it works so well you never even think about it. Here is what changes. Somewhere after 60, that system starts running weaker on 3 separate fronts. You sweat less and later than you used to, so you lose one of your main ways to dump heat. Your sense of temperature and thirst both dull, so your body stops sounding the alarm as loudly. And an older heart has a harder time pumping all that extra blood to the skin, especially if it's already working against high blood pressure or heart disease. None of this means you're frail. It happens to strong, active, healthy people. It's just biology, and almost no one tells you about it. One more thing decides how dangerous a hot day really is, and the plain temperature on the forecast actually hides it from you. It's humidity. Your main cooling tool is sweat evaporating off your skin and carrying heat away with it. But when the air is already thick with moisture, that sweat has nowhere to go. It just drips off you and does almost nothing to cool you down. That's why 90 degrees in a dry desert and 90 degrees in a humid, sticky climate are 2 completely different days for your body. It's the reason forecasters talk about the heat index, which is the temperature it actually feels like to your body once you fold in the humidity. When you're deciding how careful to be, that heat index number is the one to go by. And check the forecast the night before a hot spell. If your phone can send you local heat alerts, turn them on so a dangerous day never catches you by surprise. So every mistake I'm about to give you comes down to one question. Is this helping your body get rid of heat, or is it quietly sabotaging a cooling system that's already running on a thinner margin than it used to? Keep that question in your head, and let's go. The first mistake is trusting a fan to keep you safe. I know how that sounds, because a fan feels like the obvious answer. It's what we all grew up with. The air moves, your skin feels cooler, and you assume you're protected. And in mild heat, you are. A fan helps your sweat evaporate, and that cools you down. But there is a temperature where a fan stops helping and actually starts hurting you, and this is the part that catches people. The Centers for Disease Control is direct about it. When the air in the room climbs into the mid to high 90s, an electric fan will not prevent heat-related illness. Above roughly 95 degrees, the air itself is hotter than your skin. So instead of carrying heat away from you, the fan is now blowing hot air across your body, and that can actually push your core temperature up. And because that moving air feels like a breeze, it fools you. You feel a little cooler right up until the moment you're in trouble, so you sit there, comfortable, while your body is quietly overheating. This is exactly why so many people are found in a warm room with the fan still running. They did the thing that had always worked. They just didn't know it stops working at a certain temperature, and that nobody had raised that number to them. So here is what to do instead. In genuinely dangerous heat, a fan alone is not enough, and you cannot rely on it as your only defense. The single strongest thing that protects you is air conditioning, and the CDC is clear that even a few hours a day in air conditioning meaningfully lowers your risk. If you have it, use it, and stop worrying about the electric bill on the worst days, because this is your health. If you don't have air conditioning at home, this is the day you go somewhere that does. A cooling center, a library, a shopping mall, a friend's house. A few hours in real cool air resets your body, and if you're using a fan, make it work harder for you by wetting your skin. A cool, damp cloth on your neck, a spray bottle, a cool shower gives that fan something to evaporate and actually pull heat away. A fan moving air over dry skin in a hot room is doing almost nothing for you, and don't underestimate a plain cool shower or bath. It's one of the fastest ways to bring your core temperature down when a room has gotten too warm, quicker than a fan and quicker than a cold drink. Loose, light, pale-colored clothing helps too, because it lets what sweat you do make actually evaporate. On the hottest days, a cool shower in the morning and again in the evening, with a damp cloth on the back of your neck in between, will do more for you than any fan in the house. The second mistake is the one I most wish more people understood, because it's invisible. It's failing to account for the medications you take. This is where being over 60 stacks the deck, because this is the age when most of us are on at least one daily prescription, and several of the most common ones quietly interfere with the exact cooling system we just talked about. Let me name them, because you deserve specifics, not vague warnings. Water pills, the diuretics that millions of people take for blood pressure or swelling, pull fluid out of your body on purpose. That's their job. But in a heat wave, when you're also losing fluid through sweat, they can push you into dehydration faster, and they can blunt your sense of thirst so you don't feel it coming. Beta blockers, another enormous blood pressure category, do two things the CDC specifically warns about in hot weather. They can reduce how much you sweat, and they can lower the heart's ability to pump that extra blood to your skin. Two of your main cooling tools turn down at once. And a whole class called anticholinergics, which shows up in some bladder medications, certain antidepressants, even some over-the-counter sleep and allergy pills, can directly shut down sweating. None of this means these drugs are bad. They are keeping your blood pressure and your heart where they need to be, and that matters. Which brings me to the most important sentence in this whole section. Do not ever stop or skip one of these medications because it's hot out. That can be far more dangerous than the heat itself. What you do instead is plan around them. If you take any of these, you are simply at higher risk on a hot day, and you need to be more aggressive about staying cool and staying hydrated than the person next to you who takes nothing. This summer, before the next hot spell, call your doctor's office or ask your pharmacist one simple question. Which of my medications affect how I handle heat? And is there anything I should adjust on the hottest days? That is a 5-minute conversation that most people never have, and it is one of the highest value things you can do. Some doctors will fine-tune the timing of a dose in extreme heat, but that decision belongs to them, with your history in front of them, never to you alone in your kitchen. Let me pause for one quick favor, because this is a natural spot for it. If this is useful to you so far, please subscribe, tap the like button, and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and how hot it's gotten this week. I read them, and it genuinely shapes what I make next. Alright? The third mistake. The third mistake is waiting until you feel thirsty to drink. For most of your life, thirst was a reliable alarm. Your body needed water, thirst told you, you drank, problem solved. But remember what I said about that cooling system dulling with age. Your thirst signal is part of it, and it is one of the first things to fade. And this is well documented. The National Institute on Aging points out that older adults simply feel less thirsty than younger people, even when their bodies are genuinely low on fluid. Add a water pill to that, and add the extra fluid you're sweating out in the heat, and you can slide into real dehydration without your body ever raising its hand to tell you. By the time you actually feel parched on a hot day, you are already behind, and playing catch-up in the heat is a losing game. Dehydration thickens your blood, drops your blood pressure, strains your heart and your kidneys, and it makes a dizzy spell or a fall much more. So you cannot use thirst as your guide anymore. You have to drink on a schedule whether you feel like it or not. On a hot day, keep a glass or a bottle of water within arm's reach and sip from it steadily through the whole day, not in a few big gulps. A rough target for most people is a glass of water every hour or so during a hot day, and more than that if you're active or sweating, unless your doctor has told you to limit your fluids. A simple way to check whether it's working is to look in the toilet bowl. If your urine is pale, close to the color of light straw, you're doing well. If it's dark and concentrated, you're behind, and you need to catch up. Now, one honest caution, because it connects back to mistake 2. A small number of people, mainly those with advanced heart failure or kidney disease, are told by their doctors to limit their fluids. If that's you, this rule bends, and your doctor's fluid limit wins. For everyone else, steady water through a hot day is one of the simplest things that keeps you out of trouble. And if you're sweating a lot for hours, plain water isn't quite enough on its own, because you're also losing salt and minerals. That's the moment for a glass with some electrolytes, or a little juice, or a snack with some salt in it, to keep your body's chemistry balanced. And one more thing on fluids, because it trips people up at exactly the wrong moment, a summer cookout or a long hot afternoon on the porch. Alcohol and a lot of caffeine both pull fluid out of you, so a couple of beers or several cups of coffee in the heat quietly push you the wrong way, right when you can least afford it. You don't have to give them up. Just match each one with an extra glass of water and go easy when it's truly dangerous outside. The fourth mistake is the one that fills those grim statistics I opened with. It's trusting your own body to tell you when your home has become dangerous. We touched on why. When the temperature and thirst signals dull, you lose the internal warning that used to keep you safe. And here is the cruel part. On a slow, creeping hot afternoon, your house heats up degree by degree, so gradually that you adjust to it without noticing. You feel warm, maybe a little tired, maybe a bit foggy, and you tell yourself you're fine. Meanwhile, the room around you has climbed past the point where your weakened cooling system can keep up. This is why the majority of heat deaths happen indoors, not out in the sun, and why researchers keep finding the same heartbreaking detail. So many of the people who die had a home that was simply too hot, and in many cases an air conditioner that was switched off or never there at all. More than 80% of Americans who die from heat are over the age of 60. This mistake is the reason. Let me tell you about a man I'll call Frank. Frank is a composite, stitched together from patients I've cared for, but every piece of him is real and common. Frank was 78, lived alone, sharp as a tack, proud of his independence. He took a water pill and a beta blocker for his blood pressure, both of them doing their job. And Frank had grown up without air conditioning and never trusted it, so on hot days he kept it off to save money and cracked a window and ran a fan. He did not feel like he was in danger. He felt warm and a little wiped out, and he figured it was just his age and the weather. What Frank couldn't feel was that all of it was stacking. The heat, the fan blowing warm air, the water pill drying him out, the beta blocker holding down his sweat and his heart. His body was overheating, and the very alarms that should have screamed at him had been turned down by his age and his medications. He didn't call anyone, because from the inside he felt fine. So the fix here is to stop trusting the feeling, because the feeling itself is the thing that's broken. Instead, you trust a number and you trust a person. Put a cheap thermometer where you can see it, and know your line. When the room you're in is pushing past the mid-80s and climbing, and especially if it's you and it's a hot week, don't tough it out. That is the time to get to cooler air. A few simple moves also keep your home from turning into that trap in the first place. Close the blinds and curtains on the sunny side of the house during the day, so you aren't letting the sun bake your rooms while you sit in them. Remember that heat rises, so an upstairs bedroom can be several degrees hotter than the ground floor. On a brutal day, sit and sleep in the lowest, coolest room you have. And if you have errands, yard work, or a walk you want to take, do it in the early morning or after the sun drops in the evening. And stay out of the direct sun in the middle of the day, roughly 10 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon, when it's at its most punishing. And you set up a buddy system. If you live alone, you arrange for one person, a neighbor, a daughter, a friend from church, to check on you every single day during a heat wave, in person or by phone. And you do the same for someone else. Half the tragedy in these stories is that the person had no idea they were in danger, and nobody was looking in. A single daily knock on the door saves lives. It very nearly wasn't enough for Frank, and I'll tell you how his story ends in just a moment, because it connects directly to the fifth and most important mistake of all. The fifth mistake is not knowing the difference between being overheated and being in a genuine emergency, because that difference is the line between a scare and a death, and it comes down to a handful of signs. There are two stages here, and you need to be able to tell them apart. The first is heat exhaustion. This is your body waving a red flag while it can still be saved easily. The signs are heavy sweating, skin that's cool and clammy, muscle cramps, feeling weak, dizzy, or nauseated, a headache, a fast but weak pulse. If you catch it here, the fix is simple and it works. Stop everything. Get into a cool place or the shade, lie down, loosen your clothing, sip cool water, and put cool wet cloths on your skin, especially your neck, your armpits, and your groin, where big blood vessels run close to the surface. Give it a little time, and heat exhaustion usually turns around. But if it's missed, it can tip over into the second stage, and the second stage is heat stroke, which is a true call 911 right now medical emergency. According to the CDC, heat stroke is when your core temperature climbs to around 104 degrees or higher, and your body's cooling has completely failed. Here are the signs that must scare you into action: confusion, slurred speech, or a person just not acting right, not making sense. Skin that has often gone hot and dry because the sweating has shut down. A pounding, rapid pulse, a throbbing headache, fainting, or a loss of consciousness. That confusion, that change in how a person is thinking and behaving, is the single most important warning sign, and it's the one families brush off as tiredness or old age. Do not brush it off. At 104 degrees and rising, the body starts to cook its own organs, the brain included, and every minute counts. If you ever see those signs in yourself or in someone else, call 911 immediately. While you wait, get the person into cool air, get them into a cool shower or bath if you can, or put ice packs and cold wet cloths on the neck, the armpits, and the groin, and keep them there. Cooling them fast in those first minutes before the ambulance even arrives is what saves the brain and saves the life. One important caution, because people get this wrong with the best of intentions. If the person is confused, drowsy, or is passed out, don't try to give them water or pour it into their mouth, because in that state they can choke on it, and that turns one emergency into two. Keep cooling them from the outside, with cold cloths and ice at the neck, the armpits, and the groin, and let the paramedics handle any fluids once they arrive. And this is where Frank's story turns. Frank got lucky, and the luck had a name. His neighbor, a woman 2 doors down, had made a habit that hot week of walking over each evening to say hello. That evening, Frank didn't answer the door the way he usually did, and when she found him, he was slumped in his chair, awake but confused, mumbling, not making sense, his skin hot and dry to the touch. She knew enough to know that confusion in a heat wave is not tiredness. She called 911, got cold wet towels onto his neck and under his arms while she waited, and the paramedics cooled him on the way in. Frank spent 2 days in the hospital with heat stroke, and he walked out. The doctor told his family plainly that another hour alone in that chair, and they would very likely have lost him. Frank is fine today. He runs the air conditioning now on the hot days, without a word about the bill, and his neighbor still stops by. He lived because one person knew one sign. That is the whole reason I made this video. So let me put the 5 together, simply, so you can act on them today. 1. Don't trust a fan alone in serious heat. Above the mid-90s, it can make things worse, so get into air conditioning for at least a few hours, and wet your skin if you're using a fan. 2. Know your medications. Water pills, beta blockers, and some bladder, sleep, and allergy pills all make heat more dangerous, so ask your doctor or pharmacist what to do on the hottest days, and never stop a medication on your own. 3. Don't wait until you're thirsty. Drink on a schedule and check that your urine stays pale. 4. Don't trust the feeling that you're fine. Trust a thermometer and set up someone to check on you every day during a heat wave and check on someone else. And 5. Learn the signs of heat stroke. Confusion, hot dry skin, a pounding pulse, fainting. If you see them, call 911 and start cooling the person immediately, because minutes decide everything. None of these cost much. None of them are complicated. Every single one is a lever you hold in your own hand, and any one of them can be the thing that gets you, or someone you love safely to the far side of this summer.